Emma Carlson, 14 years old, did not return home after evening cycling training. The last call from her came exactly at 9:56 in the evening. After 78 minutes, her mother, Susan Carlson, officially reported to the police. Emma was missing. Thus began one of the most confusing stories of the small town of Somerville. After 2 days, volunteers discover Emma's bicycle. It lies on the rocky shore by Miller Creek, 5 kilometers from her usual route. Next to the bicycle tire prints are clearly visible. Goodyear Wrangler, size 255/70 R16, pronounced winter tread. Track width exactly 255 millimeters. Emma's school coach, James Larkin, gives testimony. She finished training last, left around 10:05 in the evening. It was dark outside, streetlights turned off. I checked the gym door and left too. His voice is uncertain. His gaze turns aside. He clearly is not saying everything he knows, but the police are not insisting yet. The sports school parking lot surveillance camera records movement. At 10:14 in the evening, an unlit green van appears in the frame. The license plate is illegible, the car make indeterminable. It is only known that at this time there should not have been any cars in this area. Mark Wheeler is the local gas station attendant at the exit from town, the only owner in Somerville of a green Ford Econoline van using exactly Goodyear Wrangler tires of this size. Police officers examine his car. It is perfectly clean, recently washed, tire tread worn 70%. Wheeler answers questions briefly without emotion. I was home. The car is always in the yard overnight. You can ask my wife. However, there is another person under suspicion, James Larkin, Emma's coach. Police check financial documents. Larkin has serious debts, creditors demand payments, accounts frozen by court orders. A motive appears. Financial difficulties and stress could lead to unpredictable behavior. On the third day, police obtain a warrant to search James Larkin's house. In the storage room, they find a light blue bicycle helmet. Exactly this color helmet Emma Carlson had on the day of her disappearance. Larkin is stunned. He pales and declares that this is a mistake. The helmet belongs to his niece, who visited him several times during the summer. Police record the testimony, but do not yet dismiss the version. The helmet is sent for examination to the state laboratory, results expected within 24 hours. Night Patrol raises a drone with thermal camera. At 3:24, the drone records a thermal trace in the forest 900 meters from the dirt road leading from Miller Creek. The zone is difficult to access, no communication, radio signal unstable. The trace suddenly breaks off, as if dissolving in the dense night fog. Police officers mark the coordinates and wait for dawn. None of them yet knows whose trace this is and whether it will lead to any explanation of Emma's disappearance. On the morning of March 13th, just 11 hours after Emma Carlson's disappearance, Mark Wheeler visits the auto store Auto Parts Express. Cameras record him in the store at 9:12 in the morning. A receipt discovered later by investigators confirms the purchase. One automobile headlight, halogen H6054. The store is located 2.5 kilometers from Wheeler's house. The walk takes about 30 minutes. Police obtain a new piece of evidence. A recording from the Pine Fuel gas station surveillance camera from 3:19 that same night. On it, Wheeler's green van is clearly visible. The vehicle moves slowly. The right headlight is not working. Despite poor lighting, the license plate is partially distinguishable, and the investigation confidently confirms. The recording shows exactly Mark Wheeler's van. However, a logical contradiction arises. Why, having discovered the malfunction deep in the night, did Wheeler take no action immediately? Instead, he calmly waits until morning to walk to the store. This forces police to once again carefully examine his testimony. Investigators summon Wheeler for additional questioning. He behaves calmly. His voice betrays no agitation. To a direct question about the malfunction, he immediately responds that on the evening of March 12th, he drove to get firewood at the Greenwood Logs warehouse. Allegedly, on the return trip, a stone damaged the headlight. So at night, he drove carefully and in the morning replaced it as soon as the store opened. But verification of this version quickly shows that Wheeler is lying. Investigators examine surveillance recordings and question warehouse personnel. On the evening of March 12th, no one saw Wheeler's green van. His automobile was not recorded by any warehouse camera, personnel confirm. Mark Wheeler did not visit the warehouse that evening. That same day, police conduct a thorough examination of Wheeler's van interior. Investigators assume that important evidence may be hidden in the automobile. However, biological tests show negative results. No traces indicating violent actions or struggle are found. The interior is perfectly clean. Investigators record this but do not rush to final conclusions. Police simultaneously talk with Wheeler's neighbors and acquaintances. Widow Carolyn Jennings, an elderly woman living across the street, characterizes him as withdrawn and very quiet. She tells that after his spouse's death 3 years ago, Wheeler noticeably changed, became silent, and almost stopped leaving the house except for work and rare trips on business. The neighbor noticed nothing suspicious in his behavior. The investigation returns to the main evidence, the van's tires. Experts conduct detailed comparison of Wheeler's tire treads with prints found near Miller Creek, where they discovered Emma's bicycle. The analysis result causes investigators bewilderment. The tread depth on the van differs from traces at the scene by exactly 0.8 millimeters. This significant difference indicates that the tires that left the print by the creek were much newer or less worn. Possibly Wheeler replaced the tires after the incident, although there is no formal proof of this yet. Facts confirm Wheeler is hiding something important connected with that night. Police are forced to maintain distance and continue observation. Mark Wheeler remains the main suspect, although direct grounds for his detention are still insufficient. Police return to Emma Carlson's family to clarify circumstances of the last days before her disappearance. During the second interrogation, Emma's mother, Susan Carlson, behaves noticeably more nervously than before. She reluctantly admits that a conflict indeed occurred between Emma and Coach Larkin shortly before her disappearance. Susan explains her silence by saying she considered this argument an ordinary work moment, not deserving police attention. According to the mother's testimony, Emma complained several times about irregular training schedule, late sessions, and excessive workload. But Susan never supposed this could have any relation to her daughter's disappearance. Investigators record this testimony, noting inconsistencies with previous interrogations. To additionally clarify the situation, police seize Emma's correspondence from the school chat. In one of the personal messages to her close friend 2 days before her disappearance, Emma writes that she is worried and doesn't want to disgrace herself before Larkin. Emma provides no details about the reasons for this concern, but the fact of hidden tension becomes obvious to police. Parallel to this, in the process of checking Emma's financial operations, detectives find a strange money transfer made by Coach James Larkin to Emma's account through the PayPal system. The transfer amount is $120. The note states, "Sports nutrition." Police immediately summon Larkin for a new interrogation. James Larkin explains the transfer simply during interrogation. He allegedly replaced Emma's broken bicycle pedals and transferred money to her so she could order suitable sports nutrition online herself. His version sounds logical. However, the examination of the bicycle that was found at Miller Creek shows that the pedals were absolutely intact and had no damage at the time of discovery. Larkin is clearly lying again. News about the money transfer and the search of Larkin's house quickly leaks to the press. The local newspaper releases material under the loud headline, "Coach Maniac," clearly hinting at the dark motives of his behavior. Police are forced to urgently seize and examine Larkin's laptop. Media demand the trainer's immediate arrest. However, investigators are cautious. No real compromising information was found in Larkin's laptop. Personal data, correspondence, and even browser history contain nothing suspicious. In parallel, the investigative team requests and studies additional data from the sports complex's surveillance cameras. An important piece of evidence becomes the recording from the night of Emma's disappearance. At 11:50, the camera clearly captures Larkin locking the gym with a key. In parallel, police request GPS logistics data from the local grocery delivery service, whose car arrived at a neighboring house at 11:55. The service driver confirms the trainer's presence in the parking lot near the gym exactly until midnight. Larkin's alibi proves to be ironclad. Thus, despite suspicions and public resonance, the version about trainer James Larkin's involvement in Emma Carlson's disappearance finally collapses. Investigators officially close the line of investigation related to the trainer, marking it as false. However, this opens new questions regarding the Carlson family's motives. Why did they consider it unnecessary to immediately mention their daughter's important conflict with the trainer? The investigation notes the parents' strange restraint, recording that their behavior now requires separate verification. Police again turn to the main direction of investigation, to Mark Wheeler's green van and to the mystery of his tires. New data about the condition of the tires becomes priority, since this is the only real evidence linking the location where Emma's bicycle was discovered with a specific automobile. Investigators are cautious. Now the investigation is focused on technical details. Wheeler's van remains under close police surveillance, and any changes in his behavior and habits are recorded especially carefully. Thus, the investigation gradually gets rid of false leads and approaches the solution. James Larkin exits the circle of suspects, and Mark Wheeler again turns out to be the main and only real candidate for the role of key figure in this tangled story. On the 27th of April, an unusual report comes to the police department from the local energy company. According to the energy consumption schedule, a long disconnected line leading to an abandoned hunting cabin in the forest area near Highway number 12 suddenly began demonstrating constant load. The cabin was last actively used in 2014. Now there have been no official owners or tenants there for many years. According to the report, exactly on the 14th of April at 2:38 in the morning, the load on the line sharply increased to 3.8 kilowatts and has been stably holding at that level. A crew of specialists sent by the energy workers for inspection discovers strange things. A new 3-core cable is crudely connected to transformer number 412, which stretches to the old cabin through the forest. During external inspection, the technicians find no damage, but the connection condition clearly does not meet standards. Investigators who arrived at the scene immediately notice suspicious details. On the cabin's porch lies a thick chain, clearly cut recently. The traces from wire cutters are fresh. The metal has not had time to tarnish from moisture. Around there are no obvious signs of life, but at the entrance door, traces of fresh activity are distinctly noticeable. Trampled grass, shoe prints that cannot yet be precisely identified. For complete certainty, police conduct additional verification of the territory. Experts take samples from the well located just 15 meters from the structure. Laboratory analysis shows clear signs of recent water use. High content of detergents indicates that someone regularly used the well, recently conducting sanitary treatment of something inside the cabin. The technician servicing the power transmission line suggests that the cabin might have been occupied by poachers or local residents to install a freezer for storing game. However, this version looks doubtful, considering the stability and duration of the electrical load, as well as the absence of other traces characteristic of poaching activity. At the same time, police check information received from elderly hunters who have known this area for many years. They report that they previously saw teenagers near the cabin who arranged meetings there and games with electronics. According to them, these were local cyberpunks enthusiastic about technology and survival games. But operational verification of this version quickly reveals its inconsistency. None of the teenagers previously noticed in the forest can be connected with the current incident. Police officially mark this direction as a false lead and close it. An important discovery becomes the testimony of one of Mark Wheeler's neighbors. In conversation with police, he remembers that Wheeler participated many years ago in repairing local power transmission lines, and according to him, Mark keeps a detailed map of all forest power lines in the vicinity at home. This information attracts the investigation's attention to Wheeler's figure, as it directly connects him with the place where the new anomaly was discovered. Police decide to break open the cabin doors to conduct an inspection. Acting according to procedure and having obtained a court order in advance, investigators carefully open the lock. Inside, they see old furniture, several empty food boxes, a generator, and a recently installed electric hot plate. Inspection of the premises proceeds quickly but quietly and without haste, until one of the policemen notices a strange sound, barely perceptible, but distinct muffled knocking coming from behind the wooden wall. He immediately stops the group with a gesture pointing to the source of the noise. Someone is clearly in the cabin. This person is alive and trying to attract attention. The policemen stop active actions and begin careful preparation for extracting whoever turned out to be behind the wall. They record this moment and call for backup, not rushing to make a mistake that could destroy important evidence. The atmosphere sharply changes. Now the cabin in the forest becomes the key point of investigation, connecting together scattered details that previously seemed random. Thus, the old power transmission line unexpectedly became the most important clue in Emma Carlson's case. The investigation is confident that it is literally one step away from establishing the final connection between this place and the main suspect, Mark Wheeler. Now, police must establish how strongly all the found evidence is connected, and whether this old hunting cabin will be able to reveal the secret of Emma's disappearance. Inside the hunting lodge, police find Emma Carlson. She is alive, emaciated, chained to a heating pipe. Nearby on the wooden floor lies a box with a new Wright halogen H6054 headlight, the very one that Mark Wheeler bought on the morning of March 13th. The receipt from the auto store matches the headlight's serial number. The conducted forensic examination of Wheeler's van tires definitively confirmed that his vehicle was near Miller Creek on the night of the disappearance. The difference in tread depth of 0.8 millimeters, which previously puzzled investigators, was explained by natural tire wear over 6 weeks of regular driving. Neighbors confirmed that Wheeler annually changed the wheels on his van before winter season and stored old sets in his garage. These tires, according to print comparison results, match completely. The key evidence is the right headlight. Investigators find small fragments of the old headlight on the van's bumper. They confirm that it was broken precisely on the evening of March 12th, on the day of Emma's disappearance. The purchase of a new headlight the morning of the following day became another confirmation of Wheeler's involvement in the crime. He tried to hide the vehicle damage to avoid police attention. Police searched Mark Wheeler's house and discovered documents there confirming his long-standing connection with the local energy company. It turned out that Wheeler previously worked as an amateur electrician, participated in repair and maintenance of local lines, including transformer number 412. Keys to the distribution box of that very line, which supplied the hunting lodge with energy, were also found in his house. During interrogations, a forensic psychiatrist gave a conclusion about Mark Wheeler's motive. In 2019, he lost his daughter in a car accident. After the tragedy, Wheeler never recovered psychologically. The examination revealed in him a pathological desire to replace the lost daughter with another figure of similar age. This is precisely what served as the reason why he chose Emma. Forensic examination confirmed this hypothesis with a phrase from the medical report: pathological need for a substitute object. After arrest and placement in a preliminary detention cell, Mark Wheeler attempts to end his life by cutting his veins with a disposable razor. Medical personnel react quickly, and the attempt proves unsuccessful. In court, this incident is not taken into consideration as a mitigating circumstance. Wheeler appears before the court fully conscious of the gravity of what he had done. On February 28, 2022, after several months of court proceedings, the district judge delivers the final sentence. Mark Wheeler is found guilty of kidnapping and unlawful detention of Emma Carlson and is sentenced to 28 years of imprisonment without the right to parole. Emma Carlson, at the time of sentencing, is in stable condition under medical supervision. Medical reports briefly record, physical and psychological condition is stable. Therapeutic rehabilitation is being conducted. Emma makes no public statements. The family avoids contact with the press. A teenager who presented himself as an attentive and good-natured neighbor penetrated into the daily life of an elderly couple and gained their complete trust. No one could imagine that behind the smile and caring words lay a carefully thought-out strategy. What the police discovered in the freezer of their garage shocked all neighbors and relatives. On the 14th of March 2024, police arrived at Rua das Flores in a quiet neighborhood of Cascais, only 500 meters from the central beach. They responded to complaints from neighbors about an overflowing mailbox and a persistent smell of spoiled food from the garage. Officially, the couple Armando and Joanna had been considered on a cruise for several months. They had departed in July 2023 and were supposed to return for the New Year holidays. Officers opened the door to the house with a search warrant number 743/2024, which had been approved by the judge of the Lisbon City Court. Upon entering, police noticed strange details. No one had obviously been in the house for a long time. The interior, covered with a thin layer of dust, contrasted sharply with the functioning light in the kitchen, which turned on every evening at exactly 22:30 thanks to an automatic timer relay. Internal disorder was not present, but small signs of the residents' long absence caught the eye. The main discovery awaited the investigators in the garage. Between shelves with neatly arranged tools stood a freezer that hummed quietly and continuously consumed about 450 watts, according to reports from the e-Reader's smart meter. The chest looked new, obviously recently purchased. Stickers from the household goods store were still preserved on its surface. Police officers opened the freezer in the presence of a court expert. Inside, they discovered neatly arranged human remains, frozen to complete preservation. Experts quickly determined the identities based on indirect features of clothing and jewelry. The remains belonged to Armando and Joanna. The couple, whom neighbors thought were on a long cruise, had in reality never left their own house. The neighbors' reaction was predictable: fear, shock, mistrust toward each other. Initially, two people drew the attention of the investigation. One of them was the teenager Rui, a 17-year-old neighbor and constant helper of the family. He seemed confused, gave short answers to police questions, but did not avoid communication. The second suspect was João, a local fisherman whose house was opposite. Between him and Armando, there had previously been a loud conflict over a parking space in front of the house. This conflict was well known to the entire neighborhood. An obvious testimony spoke for the version of João's involvement. The neighbor living opposite informed police that she had seen the fisherman near the couple's house on the night of the 18th of July 2023, only one day after the couple had allegedly departed for the cruise. Suspicion immediately fell on João since he had been noticed at a late hour, and at that time he seemed to be the only one who had an obvious motive to harm Armando. However, investigators did not draw hasty conclusions. An important moment stood out clearly in the chain of events. According to reports from e-Reader's company, which was responsible for the energy supply of the neighborhood, high energy consumption in the couple's house began exactly on the night of their disappearance, from the 17th to the 18th of July 2023. That is, the freezer installed in the garage began working practically immediately after the couple's disappearance. But if the house was empty, who turned on the device and why did the freezer work without interruption until the moment of discovery? At this point in the investigation, it was decided to go back to the summer of 2023. Exactly then, police believe, the events arose that ended with the tragedy in the house on Rua das Flores. Rui and João were officially recognized as the first suspects. Evidence and witness statements would confirm or refute their involvement. Information about the case was limited and disconnected, and police understood that much remained to be discovered. There was hope that details carefully hidden behind routine details would soon come to light. From the beginning, one circumstance attracted the investigation's attention. The teenager Rui visited the elderly couple completely selflessly and regularly. No obvious benefit was visible in his actions. He asked neither for money nor for any services in return. This seemed strange and even suspicious to investigators. On the 10th of September 2021, almost 2 years before Armando and Joanna's disappearance, police checked Rui's school documents. The official certificate revealed that the teenager had voluntarily committed himself. He delivered groceries from the supermarket and provided household help for elderly neighbors. Formerly, this was considered school internship and was absolutely free. The documents confirmed that Rui was included in the assistance program for elderly people. Neighbors also confirmed that the teenager visited Armando and Joanna daily. They regularly heard him call them avós, that is, grandmother and grandfather. Such closeness seemed natural. None of the neighbors saw anything suspicious. In conversation with investigators, Rui calmly explained the daily visits to the elderly couple. He claimed that Joanna was an excellent cook, and he went to her to learn to cook traditional Portuguese dishes. The teenager seemed completely convincing and confidently told about his future. He wanted to study at a culinary academy and connect his career with it. His explanations sounded reasonable, and investigators noticed no signs of nervousness or lies. At this point, police had no grounds for direct suspicions. The teenager's sincerity and his persuasiveness played their role. Police relaxed attention on Rui and concentrated on other potential clues and suspects. The teenager's behavior, his calm and openness seemed completely genuine. Suspicion against Rui seemed temporarily groundless. However, one circumstance later forced police to return to Rui. 2 days before Armando and Joanna's alleged departure, on the 15th of July 2023, surveillance cameras captured Rui purchasing exactly the timer relay that was later used to imitate the couple's presence in the house. No one paid attention to that at the time. But the recording remained and became the most important clue for the investigation. Investigators decided to focus attention on strange postcards that were sent in the name of Armando and Joanna already after their disappearance. On the 20th of July 2023, neighbors began receiving these postcards, and each new detail only strengthened police suspicions about who might actually have sent them. The first postcards that arrived at neighbors after Armando and Joanna's disappearance looked ordinary. "We are on a cruise. Everything is wonderful." But the legitimate question arose. How did they send these postcards if the couple practically never used the internet and rarely traveled alone without help from relatives? On the 20th of July 2023, neighbors began receiving strange postcards. All bore an official postmark from the city of Sesimbra, a small fishing village only 40 kilometers from Cascais. Police attention was immediately drawn to this stamp, since the officially announced cruise by Armando and Joanna began in the city of Porto, in the opposite part of the country, along the Douro River. This was strange. If the couple had gone traveling in the north, why did the mail come from southern Portugal? The investigators drove to Sesimbra to check the local post machine and the surveillance cameras installed in the office. The cameras stored recordings for exactly 30 days. On the recordings, they found a person sending postcards, but the image quality was so blurred that it was impossible to recognize the sender's face. One could only see the general outlines of a person in everyday clothing, without distinct features or recognizable traits. And this significantly complicated the police work. The police spoke with the closest relatives of Armando and Joanna when investigators asked why the postcards came with a local postmark. Although the couple's route was officially announced from the city of Porto along the Douro River, the relatives calmly explained, it was always more convenient for them to get to Porto from Sesimbra. From here, the transport connection is better. They could well have traveled by bus in advance. stayed overnight with acquaintances, and then set off to the north. The answer seemed convincing, logical, and completely freed the relatives from any suspicion. The investigation took this version as a basis and concentrated on other possible versions and suspects. Nevertheless, the investigators decided not to completely exclude another possible version. The postmark could theoretically have been forged or subsequently placed by someone from the postal employees. During the check, it turned out that the local postman knew the couple personally, had delivered correspondence to them several times, and had the possibility to place the stamp himself. His version of events seemed completely harmless, but was not yet documented or confirmed by an alibi. The police marked this false trail as open and requiring examination in the next block. Parallel to the postcards, an energy technician from the company E-Readies shared a strange coincidence with the police. Since Armando and Joanna's disappearance, an unusually high and stable electricity consumption had been observed in their house. The readings of the smart meter left no doubt. Consumption rose sharply in July, on the same days when the couple allegedly left. This clearly indicated that someone was actively using electricity in the house that was officially considered empty. The investigation came upon a new line that forced the police to direct attention to the August events. On the 2nd of August 2023, Armando and Joanna's house suddenly appeared in the list of Airbnb advertisements. Who and why offered the empty house for rent was what the investigation had to find out further. At the beginning of August 2023, Armando and Joanna's house, known among neighbors as Casa do Mar, suddenly appeared on the Airbnb platform. Who could have placed this advertisement if the owners were officially on a cruise and could not possibly do it themselves? On the 2nd of August 2023, the investigation received access to information about the house booking. Airbnb's security service promptly transmitted data to the police after an official request. It turned out that the house was registered on the platform by a certain Rui M., who uploaded his personal student ID with a clear photo for verification. The money for the rent was transferred to a virtual Revolut card, which complicated the direct determination of the account holder. But the name specified in the account matched Rui's ID. The young man, who was already known to the investigators, was again at the center of the investigation. However, the investigators had a justified doubt. Could someone else use the young man's personal data without his knowledge? The police contacted platform experts to find out how easy it is to steal someone else's student ID and use its verification for Airbnb. The security service's answer was clear. Technically, it is possible to use someone else's document, but to complete the verification procedure, a selfie is required that is verified by the platform's artificial intelligence. If the face does not match the photo in the document, the procedure will not be passed. After an additional check, the security service confirmed the selfie sent to the verification system matched exactly with Rui's photo in his student ID. Now the investigation had no more doubts about who had placed the advertisement. The young man Rui, who was officially considered only a helper of the elderly couple, became the central figure in the investigation's suspicions. Meanwhile, the first guest who had come from London to Casa do Mar gave strange statements to the police. I was met by a tall bearded man. He showed the house, explained how to use the appliances, and gave me the keys. After that, I didn't see him anymore. Rui's height was only 168 centimeters, which clearly did not correspond to the witness's description. This triggered a new wave of doubts among the police. Possibly there was another accomplice whom no one had suspected so far. The investigators turned to recordings from the surveillance camera at the entrance of the house opposite Casa do Mar, which had been installed by neighbors a year earlier. The camera captured the figure of a person who entered the house on the day of the guest's arrival using a code key. Experts carefully analyzed the recording and determined the height. The figure was about 190 centimeters tall, significantly taller than the young man Rui. Now it became clear to the investigation that a third person was involved in the case, whose participation remained a complete mystery so far. The investigation returned again to the 18th of July 2023, when the conflict between Armando and João, the fisherman neighbor, took place. The investigation suspected that this conflict could be connected with the appearance of the third person in the story, as well as with the subsequent events. The night of the 18th of July 2023 immediately drew the investigators' attention when the neighbor living opposite informed the police that she had seen the fisherman João near Armando and Joanna's house. The question the investigators were now dealing with was simple. Why was João there exactly on the night when the couple's disappearance presumably took place? The interrogation of the neighbor Maria Costa, who lived opposite, gave the investigation a clear understanding of what had happened. Maria confirmed that around 22:15 she heard loud voices and even brief swear words between Armando and João. According to her words, the conflict concerned the parking space opposite the couple's house, where Armando parked his car and sometimes blocked João's exit. Soon after that, around 22:40, Maria saw João leave Armando's house yard and go toward the pier. During the official interrogation, João confirmed the neighbor's words without hesitation and admitted that he was indeed there at the specified time. He told the investigation literally the following: "I was getting my tow rope. Armando had parked his car again so that I couldn't drive out. I had to go on foot for the equipment. The police examination of the area confirmed that a trace from the tow rope had indeed remained on the property, and his explanation seemed logical and plausible." Despite João's convincing explanation, the investigation could not yet definitively clear the suspicions. The main question remained whether his visit could coincide with the exact time of death of the couple. Criminal experts requested by the police reported that the results of the toxicological analysis of the couple's remains were not yet ready, and the exact time of death could not be determined provisionally. This temporarily complicated the process of checking João's alibi. To completely exclude or confirm João's involvement, the police requested and received data from the AIS tracking system for ships. This system records the location of every registered fishing boat in real time. The AIS recordings clearly showed that on the night from the 17th to the 18th of July, João's fishing trawler was at sea from 21 o'clock to 6 o'clock. The ship departed from the pier and returned within the specified time frame, moving 15 kilometers from the coast. Thus, his alibi was documented and technologically confirmed, which completely excluded the probability of his presence near the couple's house during the crucial hours. The version of João's involvement in the crime was officially closed. However, despite closing the investigation line with João, the investigators unexpectedly encountered a new clue. On the 17th of July 2023, one day before the couple's presumed disappearance, the young man Rui was captured by pharmacy cameras purchasing the medication furosemide, a strong diuretic that is often used in medicine but can also cause serious complications in elderly people. This discovery drastically changed the focus of the investigation and directed police attention back to Rui's actions during the days of the couple's disappearance. The investigation made another time jump and moved to January 2024, when the investigation finally received complete results of toxicological examinations and new evidence that could shed light on Rui's role and the great unknown. In January 2024, months after the disappearance of the couple Armando and Joanna, the investigators noticed a strange paradox. The couple's bank accounts were emptying quickly, but the utility bills for their house continued to be regularly debited. Who and how controlled the financial flows remained unclear. On the 10th of January 2024, the investigation team received full access to financial data from Millennium BCP Bank. The analysis of Armando and Joanna's bank accounts showed regular money deposits. A total of 14 transfers marked Airbnb amounting to 11,300 euros in total. The money arrived in the period from August 2023 to January 2024. This clearly confirmed the connection of the house with Rui, who had previously registered it on the Airbnb platform. Exactly, Rui officially controlled the rental of the house and received income. At the same time, the bank automatically debited monthly utility costs without cutting off electricity, water and gas. Thus, the investigation had proof that the person who controlled the couple's accounts maintained the appearance of an inhabited house and did not intend to interrupt the utility services. The investigators conducted a technical examination of digital data and tried to understand how the youth could have gained access to the couple's online banking. The expert reports were clear. The password was restored in July 2023 through the official website of Millennium BCP. The restoration request came directly from the IP address of the couple's home Wi-Fi, which completely excluded the possibility of external interference. The investigation received final confirmation. Someone from the couple's house, or with full access to their Wi-Fi, changed the password and controlled the financial flows. Simultaneously with the financial investigation, the police closed yet another false lead regarding the great unknown who received Airbnb guests. The police met again with the London guest who had come to Casa do Mar. The witness looked at detailed photos of the suspects and unexpectedly for the investigation confidently identified the tall man. It turned out that it was his own colleague from London, who at that time was participating in a conference in Almada. The confirmation of train tickets finally excluded the possibility of his involvement. The great unknown turned out to be a random person, and this false lead was officially closed. The investigators were already preparing to close the financial part of the investigation when new data came from the energy company e-Readers. The analysis of the exact logs of the smart meter revealed a strange and disturbing fact. The freezer found in the garage house was switched to maximum power at exactly 23:55 on the night of the 18th of July 2023, a time that coincided with the couple's disappearance. This precise time marker brought the investigation back to the beginning and confirmed that the disappearance and subsequent actions with the freezer were closely connected. The investigation again accelerated the pace and moved to the 28th of May 2024, the date when the long-awaited results of toxicological examinations of the couple's remains were finally announced. This data could finally clarify Rui's role and establish the exact picture of what happened. At the end of May 2024, experts finally determined the cause of death of Armando and Joanna, the simultaneous intake of a diuretic and the sleeping medication Zopiclone, which caused acute pulmonary edema. In the documents, there were no mentions of a prescription of Zopiclone for the couple. It had to be found out where it came from. On the 28th of May 2024, the forensic examination confirmed the details of what happened. It was officially declared that exactly the combination of medications that the elderly couple had taken on the evening of the 18th of July had caused fatal pulmonary edema in both. This was a carefully prepared combination of medications that got into the couple's dinner, who suspected nothing of what was happening. The forensic examiner clearly established the timeframes of the tragedy and confirmed that they completely coincided with the late dinner in Armando and Joanna's house. Now the investigation had to understand how the medication, which was not prescribed to the couple by a doctor, got into their hands. The investigators requested detailed information from the medical system and quickly received an answer. The youth Rui had personally approached the family doctor shortly before the tragedy and asked for a prescription for Zopiclone. The doctor prescribed a prescription for 10 tablets of the medication and noted in the medical record that the tablets were intended for his grandmother. The check showed that Rui's grandmother was not Joanna, but the youth had long called the couple this way, which could have misled the doctor. Thus, Rui obtained the medication officially by using the physician's trust and probably consciously falsifying the information. The police immediately called for a conversation with the family doctor who had prescribed Zopiclone to the youth. The doctor explained that there was no malicious intent on his part and the medication was prescribed exclusively at Rui's request, who described insomnia symptoms in the grandmother. However, the police decided not to completely close this episode yet and marked the doctor's actions as a possible error that required further study. At the same time, specialists in digital investigations completed the examination of Rui's laptop where important evidence was found. Among many deleted files, only one title could be partially restored: cruiseticketf.pdf. This testified that Rui had prepared in advance the staging of the couple's trip, which was later confirmed by fake postcards. The investigation moved to December 2024. By this time, the investigators had gathered enough data to put together the final picture of what happened and close the investigation, placing all the dots in this complex and tangled story. In December 2024, the investigation faced a complex task: to connect the numerous digital evidence into a unified chain leading to the youth Rui, without leaving a single break in it. On the 2nd of December 2024, specialists in digital forensics completed the full analysis of all data connected with Rui. The picture that appeared before them was clear and frighteningly consistent. The youth carefully and foresightedly planned every step. Rui's financial transactions were tracked from the virtual Revolut card to the Kraken crypto exchange, and then through special mixer services that anonymize transfers. In total, Rui managed to pass about 17,000 euros through this chain, which mainly came from renting the house through Airbnb. Such a strategy might seem overly complex for a simple youth, but the evidence was irrefutable and confirmed by examination. Another important digital evidence was the timer relay ESP8666 found in the couple's house. Experts proved that the device was programmed from Rui's laptop shortly before Armando and Joanna's disappearance. Exactly this device daily imitated the presence of residents, turning lights on and off and helping to create the illusion that the couple was still at home. One fundamental moment remained in the investigation. Was the digital evidence sufficient to bring charges against Rui? The experts answered this question clearly and confidently. They explained that the digital chain created by the youth was absolutely unbreakable. From financial flows to setting the timer relay and purchasing medications, all information was firmly connected with one person, Rui. This was sufficient to bring official charges against him. The question with the doctor who had prescribed the sleeping medication to Rui was also officially closed. The doctor provided the police with a video recording of the consultation where the youth personally asks for a prescription and justifies this with severe insomnia of the grandmother. In the recording, Rui behaved calmly and convincingly and aroused no suspicion in the doctor. After viewing the video, the investigation officially dropped the charges against the doctor for possible error or negligence. Thus, this false trail was completely and finally closed. Nevertheless, Rui's lawyer took an unexpected step aimed at undermining the main evidence. He filed a motion in court demanding the exclusion of the logs from the company eReadies, which recorded the performance of the freezer, from the case as a trade secret. The court did not immediately make a decision and postponed consideration of this most important question to a later time. This meant that the key evidence could fall out of the entire chain and endanger the entire prosecution. The court proceedings were scheduled for the 17th of January 2020. The investigation was approaching the finale, and only the court decision could finally consolidate or destroy the carefully constructed picture of digital and physical evidence. On the 17th of January 2020, the court of the city of Setúbal finally concluded consideration of the case that all of Portugal had followed with suspense for almost 2 years. In the courtroom filled with journalists and observers, the judge read the verdict. The youth Rui was found guilty on 2 serious charges: premeditated murder under aggravating circumstances and computer fraud. The investigation was able to reconstruct step by step the tragic sequence of events and reveal all stages of the carefully thought-out plan that the youth implemented in life. On the evening of the 18th of July 2023, Rui was invited to dinner. No one suspected that at this time he had already carefully measured doses of diuretic and zopiclone mixed into the food. These medications taken together caused Armando and Joanna to experience rapid and almost silent pulmonary edema in their sleep. Within a few hours, they were no more, and the couple never woke up again. The next step was covering up the consequences. Rui brought the remains of the couple to a freezer purchased in advance, which was installed in the garage. At 23:55 at night, the device was set to maximum operation. This was confirmed by precise logs from the energy company, which became the decisive evidence in the case. The creation of the illusion of life continued even after these tragic events. Rui personally sent postcards to the neighbors in the name of Armando and Joanna and tried to convince everyone around him that the couple had gone on a long cruise. In the same days, the youth programmed the timer relay for regular switching on and off of the lights, which maintained the external impression of an inhabited house. For additional credibility, Rui listed the house on Airbnb, rented it several times, and received income for this. The financial part of the plan proved to be no less thought out. The received 17,000 euros from the rental, the youth transferred to a virtual Revolut card, from where the funds were withdrawn via the crypto exchange Kraken to anonymous crypto wallets with the help of special transaction mixing services. This money was irretrievably lost to the investigation, which only emphasized the level of Rui's preparation. At the moment when the court was already ready to announce the final verdict, the youth's lawyer made a last, desperate attempt. He demanded the exclusion of the main evidence from the case materials, the smart logs of the energy company, claiming that this was supposedly a trade secret. A tense pause arose in the hall, but after a minute the judge coldly and briefly rejected the defense's motion and explained that the interests of justice stand above the commercial interests of any company. The judge read clearly and confidently the final verdict. Rui was found guilty on all charges. The youth's gaze at this moment expressed neither regret nor fear. This was the gaze of a person who acted calculatingly without emotions, believing until the end that his carefully constructed digital system would remain untouchable. But now, this was an illusion that was finally destroyed by justice. A second later, the camera captured this cold, empty gaze. Then the screen abruptly went black, leaving the viewer alone with thoughts about how calmly and cynically one can use people's trust for one's own purposes.